Right, okay, here's the question then. Who is number 3?
So number 3 is one of probably the strangest players, because I like to stick to people who are carries, like traditional, like hard, like carry roles, because in that sense of what it is. But this player has provided too many teams their like essence, stability, foundationals, draft support. He's probably one of the most flexible players in all of Dota. Is the prodigious Swedish player Zai, who now plays offlane for TL. Zai's offlane pedigree kind of like speaks for itself. So just outside, he's won 3 majors. Independent of that, he has 13 top 4s at majors across 4 different teams, and he has 5 TI top 4s. However, he has never played a final.
And as you said, the key thing there, I think, the modifier is the number of teams. He didn't just sit in one team, mate. He's been in any team he's been in the Mega pretty much.
Yep. Yeah, and he's done it. The other distinction is he's done it across like two regions, because he played in the North American stacks, he played in the European like stacks, and he also played in like the mixed teams of like Team Secret, and he has been a defining part of so many of those great teams. This year alone, right, Zai made like 7 finals and lost all of them, but in almost all of the finals, he was like one of the best players, even on like a losing team. And Zai started playing in 2014, when on the AG team, making top 3 at that TI, and he was playing support on that team. Like he switched positions to like make that team work. So this guy's like flexibility is absolutely unbelievable. He's probably one of the smartest like players and one of the best draft enabling players of any of the offlane players. If you go look at how many different distinct carry and offlane, because it's a dual lane role, it's a position 4, which is the other support and offlaner, how many different combinations of players. For example, he was playing offlane with Kuroki, right? And now which was a great like offlane of its like era. He's played 5 different iterations beyond Kuroki, and that was in like 2015. So the amount of different teammates Zai's had and the amount of different teams he's taken to the top, a lot of it just like speaks for itself. And then that's without even focusing on his individual gameplay, which is amazing. Like he might be one of the clutchest players, like, and coldest like players to have ever played like Dota. No matter the scores or the deficits, it doesn't actually ever look like Zai mentally breaks down. And offlane is like a mental break role, because there are periods of time in offlane where like it is feast or famine. You're either getting a little or you're getting a lot. But in the ones where you get a little, your net worth is wrecked. Like, it is a very, very, very mentally strenuous like role. And if you just look at Zai's career and you look at all the different teams he's enabled and the teammates he's played with, it all just speaks for itself. He's probably a candidate for one of the best offlane players of all time, and probably a candidate for one of the best like Dota 2 players of all time across the averages of his career.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you about, actually, since, as you mentioned, one of the very interesting things about him is he's basically like the ultimate fill player. When you're making a team, like, you can change players because he can just swap positions. He's just so good at them all. I was actually going to ask you which you'd go with, because like, one thing about him as well, he's clearly a cerebral player, so I was going to ask which you thought he was better at, support or offlane. But I was going to say, that's one thing I always thought was mad about his career. So people remember that first EG, right? That was the one where no one would shut the fuck up about how amazing Universe was as an offlaner. But the joke is, I actually think Sai was the better offlaner, but like for that team, he just played support, didn't he? It was him in PPV with his hard support. So, like, what do you think? I mean, you've sort of said up there. I was going to say, should be a contender for best offlaner ever, right? It's a fucking sick player at that role. And if people don't know what makes that role so interesting, if you're from other games and you only tangentially watch Dota, that's probably the most interesting of the roles, because it can essentially, I mean, you know this, part of how I actually conceptualize my analytical models for esports came from Dota. So, you know, when I do CSGO and I do the different roles, I essentially use a concept of like resources similar to like the lane structure. So I also do the same thing. My 3 position, your offlaner, I always say that's like the swing position in a team. Like if I'm in a super team of like fraggers in Counter-Strike, maybe the 3 position in my case is actually a star as well. Like Zai also could farm like a motherfucker and be like a carry on the map. But also, if you need to for the comp, that's a position position that can be a supportive element. You can have your two traditional carry in the mid, and then he's maybe more with the supports, can't you? Especially when you think when we went to those different metas. So what do you think? What's the best style for Zion? Like, is he the best offlaner ever for you?
So the problem is of the two different styles, or like three different like offlane styles, he's probably not on any of them the best individual, but across the aggregate, he's the one that can do them all, and that is where it lies. But I'm not saying, like, for example, he played offlane Naga Siren this year, which is almost an entirely universal carry pick, and he played it in the offlane this year and was like crushing people with it. He was like one of the best, like Broodmother, which is like a zookeeper, like pushing, where you take over one area of the map and you just like farm everything in that area and you just dominate it. He was one of the best like Broodmother players, but the Broodmother players are split between people who built aura items to help push, and then the carry people who built like lots of damage items to just kill people. And like Zyos could do both. He could like either, didn't matter which version it was, he would like know which to build in the game to result in the win. He has like that famous game where he starts building all the damage items and he just backdoors the enemy base and like wins them like this crazy like epic game, and he's like not even like faves, he's just like, oh, I always had it in the bag. His Darkseer, probably one of his most famous picks. It's one of the ones that has got a famous exit game where Team Secret lose to VP in 2015 TI, where Zai is just on his hands and knees trying to keep the map together with Arteezy. They're just trying to stand tall and stop the slow decay of the base falling to pieces, and he's still one of the best Darkseer players.
As you say, by the way, that's another thing that's worth pointing out. Just like Arteezy, actually, most of the time it wasn't him doing the choking. If anything, these are the two guys where it's more like you put their back against the wall. They're just like fucking Matrix, like blocking every bullet, trying to save themselves, but they still get eliminated. They just like, can't do anything. They're just in hell. And
you were talking about prize pool winnings. Zai has the highest of any non-TI winner, which is like I'm pretty sure.
It's 16th. That's insane to be 16th without winning. Yeah.
Yeah. Zai has
like he's ahead of Sumail, put it that way, but guys, like and some of the like greatest winners of all time. I know it's ridiculous, isn't it?
And outside of the majors, and like I think he's won 13 or 14 tier 1 events just separate. To like those, so like the third most important events that you can win in Dota, he's won like 13 other like tier 1 lands. Like this guy has played for so long at such a high level, I can actually barely remember down periods, and I actually can't remember if he's ever went to a team and it was worse. Like I can't think of a team I went to and it wasn't instantly better because he was on it. For example, here another one. He probably wasn't that famous like on the solely like engage like meta offlaners. When Magnus became like a massive like power pick and like the offlane, it was like Zai winning like the TI like finals with like massive RPs and like Nisha that was like that like core of the team. You know, it was the Zai engage into a Nisha assassination attempts like all over the map. Like he is probably like, if you're to draft players tomorrow and you're drafting an offlaner first, if you're not picking one of the the carry offlane players because that's how you want to play the game, you're going to pick Zai. I don't know who else you would pick, because the crazy thing is there's not anyone else like him, because your skill set is just so hard to do.
The other thing as well is this is another player where, man, the amount of chances to win TI is criminal. Like the joke is he had 3 just in fucking secret, because there was obviously this 2015 one you talk about where they like in the summer they just cracked it and they would win all the lands, and famously they just blew it in the most underwhelming fashion ever. Then there was the later ones with like the Nisha Poppy lineup where it was like one year they just came fourth, and then the next one, the 2021, spoiler, there's a reason why there wasn't TI that year. Like anyone who was on that team, Nisha, like I feel bad for all those guys, because it's like that was one of the years where they were dominating so hard, but there just wasn't a TI. So like, it's also kind of brutal because, like we say, it's not even like he's the one fucking up, but man, his teams, they just seem like when they get to TI, it just never works out. Something always gets crucially, just blows up in their face or something.
During like the COVID, like TI, like where Team Secret, they played Team Spirit in the lower bracket before like Team Spirit upset PSG that orc's curse, by the way.
It is.
I'm going to got another TI.
That in secret may as well just fuck right off at this point. Like, it doesn't matter how good your teams are, you're never allowed to win. You're not allowed to win.
Yeah. They it's a BO3 in the lower bracket, and it went all the way to 3 games, and some of the games were really, really close, and it was thin margins, like, and that's the really scary thing about Dota, particularly at TI. It comes down to really small margins sometimes. Like, you miss a smoke timing, you know what I mean? You like don't catch like someone on a ward. You're literally just about to take Roshan, and like the engaged player blanks in and kills you all. Like, it comes down to like the minute like details, but. Unlike Ramsey, if you just look at all this guy's like top placings, and like what I talked before, he wasn't like choking. Sometimes nobody on his team choked. They just lost to the better team on the day, and that's fine. Like, that happens at like TI sometimes. Just the other people figure out the meta, they figure out the picks, or they're a little bit better than you on the specific picks, and you just can't get it over the line. That's fine, and that's the scary thing about Zai's career. As he's not on the setting sun. Zai could win TI this year. He is the second favourite going into this tournament to win the whole thing, like second or third. They're like they're one of the best teams in the world, and he's still going, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop. You know
That's also what's sick about this list, if you notice, is this is why I do think the International is the cruelest tournament in all of esports. Because some of these players like already are like the greatest players of all time, even without the TI win. And then the longevity some of them have who didn't win is like, bro, like, yeah, like 5 or 6 years to do it. Like, it's one thing if you had like 1 or 2 cracks, you know, like that happens like if someone's on like one good NFL team and they have that one Super Bowl they could have won. These are just heartbreaking how some of these guys lose. And like we say, it's one thing if like you just shit the bed yourself, okay, then you got no one else to blame. It's when like you keep changing teams even. Like, the other thing about some of the Zai lineups, mate, is some of the lineups he's joining, like, these are also like the greatest winners of all time. Like, these aren't supposed to choke. Like, he's joining other TI winners, other like amazing carries. Like, his career actually, like, of all of them, might be the most confusing of them all. Like, it's actually brutal. This guy never won.
And like, when you see it, like, put through like certain lenses, it's actually just bonkers. Like, how, the way Zai's like career. Like, if you took the 2014 Zai and you showed him to somebody, I don't think anyone would have looked at that year as 2014 and go, he's going to be the player that is going to define like X amount of great teams over the later half of the decade. You know what I mean? Like, Zai was a great player in 2014, 2015, and then you tell people, yeah, by the way, when 2018 and 2019 comes around, Zai's going to be defining that decade. Or yeah, and when 2023 comes around, he's going to be one of the stoic pieces leading like another great like lineup. Like, put it this way, if you were to make a top 10 list team, right, of like all-time great teams, Zai would probably be, him and Papa would be on the most of those individual.
He's going to have like 3 or 4 or something.
Yeah, that's true. Which is when you put it like that, you're going to see like just what he is individually supplying to a team. And I don't even know what he's like personally. He seems like just a quiet like Swedish like player. I don't even know if he like calls in his like current team right now. But just based on his individual level, it's crazy what he will extract from the map, even when he's behind. That's another thing. See if I see like Zai come out of a bad lane, I'm not worried. I know he'll find some way to nickel and dime, to scrape together to be as effective as he possibly can. Where there's other like great offlane players, like for example, Team Spirit probably have the other defining great offlane player of the era, Collapse, right? Who is just a like offlane like carry player. He is out to like dominate you, right? But when Collapse is behind, I'm a bit more like, oh, well, not looking too good here, boys, because he's more of a front runner than he is a guy that like, you know, played from all different levels of goal. So yeah, Zai is just a very, very special player, and I think TL should be blessed that he's gave them like some of the best years, it seems, of his career even now.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.